Today on the show, I have the great pleasure to welcome a former Army General, Director of Military Intelligence and Special Operations Commander. Now he's a French member of the European Parliament and a first Vice President of the Security and Defense Committee at the EU, Christophe Gomart. Hi, Christophe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
You moved from the army, from the intelligence world to politics. You were retired. Why don't you enjoy your retirement?
I'm really enjoyed after 36 years in the French Armed Forces. As a French Special Operations Commander, it's not only the Army, but it's at the same time Navy and Air Force. And for military intelligence, it's exactly the same. So I'm very happy to join a private company during 7 years, then to join the politics a year ago. That's a great pleasure to discuss with you today.
So how is it 1 year as a politician?
That's a big surprise. Firstly, a French political party, Les Républicains, asked me if I was volunteer to join them for the European election as the number 3 of the French list, Les Républicains. After a quick moment of reflection, I said yes, and I have been elected on June last year. I am in the European Parliament since the 15th of July 2024. That's a real new life to discover European Parliament, to discuss with my new colleagues, because we are 720 members of European Parliament. Among them, we are 81 French colleagues. That's a great opportunity to discuss, to open my mind, because of course, it's not my past. Among my colleagues, a lot of them were ministers, were former members of national parliaments. We are 3 former generals, one coming from Estonia, another one coming from Finland. There is another one, an Italian one, not in the same political party, on the right side, among the sovereignists. That's a new life for each of them, of each of us.
In your previous life, I guess you were often facing dangers. What kind of dangers do you face now in politics? Are you still afraid once in a while?
It's a new danger. No, that's a joke. It's not a danger, but it's real. You have to adapt your own position, your own behavior, just to better understand. You have to discuss a lot, because it's impossible to decide by yourself, because you need to find coalition in your party. My political party is the first one in the European Parliament, because we are 188 members of European Parliaments. So that's the first global political party, but it's not enough. When you want to push a law, rules, you have to create a kind of coalition. You have to discuss with other political parties. That's quite different, because when I was a French general, of course, I discussed with my colleagues, but at the end, I decided. It's not exactly the same way in the European Parliament.
That must be so frustrating for you, isn't it?
It is. Sometimes.
For most of us who have not worked in special forces or military intelligence, can you just explain to us, what did you do as a director of military intelligence, a special forces commander? What is that kind of job?
Special ops commander is quite different from military intelligence director, because a special ops commander, you are on the ground, you are on the field, you have to decide, you have planned operations, you have to conduct operations. For example, I was in Mali in 2013, 11th of January, when the president of French Republic decided to launch an attack against the jihadists in the Sahel Strip. It's not exactly the same, because you took risks, many risks. Of course, we lost some soldiers. It's quite different from military intelligence, because military intelligence is a question of time. You need time to build up intelligence. Special ops, you decide very fast. For military intelligence, you need time. You need to build, you need to ask many people. You need electronic intelligence, you need satellites imagery intelligence, you need human intelligence, you need electronic warfare intelligence. So you need times to have the right intelligence to give to your deciders. From my side, it was the general in charge of armed forces and, of course, the president of the French Republic at the end, because in the French constitution, at the end, the president of the French Republic decide.
Now you had one of your first successes in the political world, where you managed to secure 1.5 billion euros for EU defense.
Yes, it's what we call EDIP. EDIP is a European Defense Industry Program. The objective is to rearm Europe thanks to European industries. The general idea defended by the European Parliament and by my political group is that European money came back to Europeans and to European industries. We need to finance European industries which build components, armaments, with 80% of UE components.
How much is it at the moment?
Unfortunately for European industries, since 2022, since the beginning of full-scale invasion in Ukraine by Russia, European countries bought 80% of their military armaments in other countries than Europe. USA, 65%, and South Korea, 15%. I don't understand why, because in fact in Europe we have enough defense industries which build many things very interesting for the armed forces. So that's why we want to push European industries to rearm Europe, because Europe decided a lot since 1945, at the end of the World War II, that the security of Europe is given to USA.
It's comfortable.
Right.
Big Brother
Because
is doing it for you. You can chill out, relax.
Exactly. It was more comfortable because it's possible to give more money for social, health, for many things, except defense and security. And suddenly, since February 2022, wow, what a big surprise. Russia is attacking Ukraine. How is possible? Because it was the end of history. And it's a big change. We have to be aware the geopolitical situation around the world is fully crazy. Not only Russia and Ukraine. When you look at Iran and Israel, Gaza and Israel, when you look at China, China is building a lot of Navy ships. Yes, the world is in crisis. It's not the World War III, fortunately for us. But if we want to give our opinion and to be so heavy that the other people trust us and be careful of us, we need to rearm our countries.
And you want to rearm the country, get the budget, you got your first 1.5 billion, and now you want 20 billion. Where do you want to stop and what do you want to do with that money?
USA spent a year 900 billion euros. European countries spent a year only 350 billion euros. So there is a gap of 500 billion euros. It's a lot. So we need to spend more because at the end, if we are too weak, we begin a target for many aggressors like Russia, Turkey, Iran, even if they are weak today, like for China, for Islamism, terrorism. And at the end, USA are an economic enemy, I think. They don't want a very strong Europe. They have exactly the same goals than Putin, if I summarize. For example, what Trump wants. He wants to divide Europe, to avoid a strong Europe. What wants Putin? Exactly the same. Not in the same way, of course. In the war way, it's not an economic war. But at the end, Muslim Brotherhood wants exactly the same. They want to divide and destroy Europe from intern Europe. That's why we need to be stronger, to be more rearmed, to be very aware about the situation, to be able to defend ourselves by ourselves.
But when I listen to you, it seems that we had a peace and protected by the US. Are we alone? I mean, you said we have all these big enemies or challengers, at least, around the world. That doesn't sound very promising.
I think that we forget who we are. We are European countries, we are European people. We knew a lot of wars all along the centuries. And suddenly, we want to avoid to make war. I want to avoid to make war, of course. But if I have to do it, I will do. That's why we need really to spread defense culture all around the Europe countries, to say to the youth, okay, guys, in the next future, you won't know exactly the same time than us, the old people. You need to be prepared. You need to be ready. That's why we speak about readiness, about preparedness, to be sure that in a few years, we will be able to fight, even if we won't fight. And I hope that we won't fight at the end. But we need to be prepared.
What is the link? You speak about moral rearmament. Is that what you mean for the young people?
Yeah.
What is it exactly?
We need to teach people what is war, what is peace, and why we have to rearm. We have to rearm because we want to be able to defend ourselves in case of an aggressor will attack us. That's why we are not in peace forever. We are in peace, fortunately, since 8 years. Okay, thanks to many people, thanks to USA. But today, the world is changing, and we have to think how it's possible to defend ourselves by ourselves. Look at Ukrainian people, for example. Suddenly, the war was at home, directly, with people killed, with people wounded. How is it possible to react? We have to be prepared. You have to be ready. So if you don't learn before, if you are not taught by old people like me, for example, to explain what is war or peace, and if you want peace, you have to prepare war.
But wait a second, because you're speaking about preparing for war, rearmament, but the more weapons we have around, if everybody does this, you know how it goes, right? Doesn't it raise the risk of war? John Lennon said, can we give peace a chance? Isn't it too dangerous to have everybody going for more weapons?
If you want to give a chance for peace, you need to be prepared. In fact, that's not fun. That's the reality, because the world is dangerous. And European countries realized on the 24th of February 2022 that suddenly the world is still dangerous. And we forgot this point. We forgot this idea that between men, between people, we are not in peace at the beginning. You have to be prepared, because otherwise we are too weak. And of course, there will be an aggressor. And at the end, we will be slaves, or maybe killed, or maybe wounded. I don't know. Your house will be destroyed, etc., etc. As a former military, I love peace, of course. I know exactly what is war, because unfortunately, I lost some soldiers under my command. I saw directly from my eyes what is war and what people suffered directly because of war.
Do you think that Europe will be capable of really doing the thing that you were saying, that is getting ready to step up so that we don't have war?
That's a good question. My reference is Ukrainian people. The resilience of Ukrainian people is so strong, so admirative. They can be proud of them. Because when you look at exactly a country with 140 million people against a country with 40 million people, even if 10 million Ukrainian people left their country, so 140 against 30 millions, and Ukrainian people still resist. How is it possible to explain?
It's unbelievable.
I think that you can explain because they want to fight, they want to resist, because they are very resilient. So suddenly, why these people were able to defend themselves and to resist against a strong country which want to invade them?
Do you really think that we would have the same resilience in the western part of Europe?
I hope. That's why we have to teach moral. We have to increase the moral of the European population. Just to explain what is war in the school, through conferences, through maybe a military volunteer service. Norway is not a member state of the European Union. But when I asked two young soldiers on the Russian border in the very high north of the Norway, they said, but I'm very proud to do my volunteer military service because my father did it, my grandfather did it, and I serve my country against an aggressor. The aggressor could be Russia. They said it's a kind of year off because I am an engineer. I work for a company which builds Navy drones. I will be happy to join again. For them, it was a year off, and I'm sure that it's possible to have the same thing in France, in Spain, Italy, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, and other European countries. I'm sure that it's possible if you explain, teach, say exactly what happens if the war arrives.
The defense of France and Europe, you say it's based on three pillars. The one is solid industry. Second is autonomous defense architecture. And the third one is a moral rearmament. So I would like to ask you, How solid is the European industry in your eyes?
European industry could be solid, but I think that the European industry is too fragmented. They need orders. They need public orders. That's vital. Of course, for France, for example, we have a big debt, like other European countries, unfortunately. But we need to make the choice for our defense. You need to consolidate, you need to concentrate European industries. This morning, I had a meeting with naval military industries. And for example, in Europe, we built 17 different kinds of tanks, 15 different kinds of fighters, 15 different kinds of frigates. It's too fragmented. We need not to rebuild, but maybe to invent big European champions. At the end, I hope that we will have maybe 2 or 3 kinds of tanks, exactly the same for fighters, etc.
Do you really believe this is going to happen with all the country states saying, I want it in my country,
Yes,
my industry?
It could happen if it's a political willing and a political industrial willing. Of course, we need both. But I'm sure when you look at, for example, Airbus industry at the beginning, nobody thought that it was a good idea. But at the end, Airbus today is a very huge industry, and this industry works well. So it could be exactly the same. We need time, of course.
Do we have time?
We don't have time. But if we don't decide tomorrow, at the end, it will be too late. To build armed forces, you need between 5 and 10 years. So that's not tomorrow, but 5 years, in 2030 till 2040. At the end, yes, I hope that we will be ready.
So you say that we have to work together, European countries, but then a lot of countries say we have to have a national defense. And yourself, you also said something like this.
No, I don't like to speak about European army because it's not true. Why? At the end, who decide to push an army to fight? Who decide asking a soldier, okay, guy, you have to fight and maybe you will be killed. So at the end, it's not the president of the European Commission. It's the French president of Republic.
Are you sure about this? Wouldn't the young Europeans say, yes, I believe in the European project and I'm ready to be under European command?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure at all. We need to build a C2. What is C2? C2 is a command and control, is to set up headquarters. And in this headquarters, of course, you have officers coming from European member states. Okay. But the country A or country B decide, I send 1 brigade or maybe 1 battalion or 12 fighters, but the unit, the company, the battalion, etc., will still command by national officer, French, Spanish, with Spanish soldiers or with French commander. Otherwise, I think it's impossible. I had some American soldiers under my command. I had some other soldiers coming from other countries under my command. But of course, their own chief was from their country. So it's possible to have C2, an HQ, to command, to conduct operation, to plan the operations. But it's not a European army. If I go further, NATO is a kind of European army. If you push back USA, Turkey, okay. Because you have an HQ, and the HQ is working very well with links, communications, intelligence, logistics. That's the main point. But for the troops, for the soldiers on the ground, on the field, in the armored vehicles, I think that they need to belong to their own countries with the agreement of their own government. Their own government decided to send their soldiers to fight.
Now, here's a question from one of our auditors.
Hello, Christophe. Greetings from Vilnius. My name is Richard, and I have a question for you. You've expressed opposition to the idea of a unified European army. Can you please explain why? And in your view, what should a future EU defense framework look like, if not a single unified force? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard, for your question. I don't think that European armed forces is a good idea, the European army, because you fight for your chief. You fight for your comrades. You know very well because you have been trained with them. You belong to the same country. You speak exactly the same language. You have the same culture. You share many things. It's quite different from the French soldiers and the Lithuanian soldiers, for example. Of course, both of us, we are European, but we don't have exactly the same culture. We don't speak the same language. So I'm sure that it's better to set up European C2 defense architecture, quite different from today, to be sure that it's possible to send people fighting. Because who decide to fight? Government decide to fight. But you need to command, to conduct, to plan the operations. Who are able to plan the operations, to conduct them? An HQ. This HQ could be armed by different officers coming from different countries. That's the main point with autonomous links, communications, intelligence, logistics. After, you can send French battalion, Lithuanian battalion under the same HQ, but the commander of the battalion will stay the Lithuanian or French. That's why I organized a seminar on the 2nd of July, just to think what is possible to do, what is possible to build, to set up between us, between European member states. For example, if NATO decide to fight, they ask to the 32 members, and if one of them said, no, I won't fight. For example, Turkey. No, I won't fight for European countries. Okay, NATO decide, okay, we don't go because Turkey is a member state, so we won't fight. So European countries have to decide by themselves, okay, but how is possible to do? That's why I'm sure that we need really a second line of defense. NATO is the first line. We need a second line of defense to be ready if need be, if suddenly we are in front of an aggressor.
And on that one, Christophe, I have another of our viewers who would have another question for you exactly on that topic.
Hi.
Hello.
I have a question as a simple Lithuanian person. This year at the beginning of autumn there will be Zapad training near Lithuanian border in Belarus. And my question is how dangerous it is for Lithuania, and what would you suggest, what would be your advice for us Lithuanians that we would be less worried? Thank you.
First of all, I understood very well that Lithuanian people, Baltic countries are worried, of course, by the Russian threat. That's why some European countries decide to send some battalions directly, for example, Germany to Lithuania, French to Estonia. French are also in Romania, just to be sure that Russia won't decide to invade these NATO and European countries, because there are NATO soldiers on the ground ready to fight if need be. The second thing is, of course, to rearm, to be stronger and to be more deterrent. We need deterrence. Today, I'm not sure that the European countries are so deterrent than we hope. When you listen, for example, Donald Trump saying that European countries don't care about you, about the war between Iran and Israel. Well, don't care, European countries don't need you. That's crazy. So I'm sure that if we want to be trusted, if we want to be listened, you need to be stronger. And to be stronger, you need to be rearmed.
Stronger, to have peace, you need to be rearmed. And that links to another question from one of our viewers, and I'll read it. She said, Russia invaded Ukraine 3 years ago, and there is no end to that terrible war to be expected. What do you think should be done to end this war as fast as possible?
That's a big concern, because when you look at the situation on the ground, each country, Ukraine and Russia, are certain that they will be the winner. How is it possible to do peace between two countries which think that they are winners? It's impossible. We live, fortunately, in peace since 80 years, so we don't know exactly what is war, what is peace. At the end of the war, there is a winner and there is a loser. But of course, Ukraine doesn't want to be the loser. I'm sure that European countries, we lie them a little bit, saying, okay, guys, we give you many MMS, many ammunitions, and thanks to that, you will be the winner. It's not really true, because we don't give a lot. we don't give very fast, and we don't have many devices. We don't have many assets. We don't have many capabilities to produce ammunition in-house, shells in-house, tanks in-house, etc., etc. And from Russia side, they are fully aware that they will be the winner. It needs time. It needs many soldiers killed or wounded, unfortunately, but they don't care about that. So how is it possible to do peace between them? Remember, Donald Trump said, okay, in 24 hours, I will get the peace.
Yeah.
So, okay,
That didn't
we are
happen.
more
Yeah.
than 100 days after, and it's not peace. Exactly the opposite. So in my mind, unfortunately, we could hope ceasefire, but there is no ceasefire. And unfortunately, day after day, you have many soldiers, many civilian people killed or wounded. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's why, if you want the weight to be heard, you need to be rearmed. You need to be strong. Otherwise, it's impossible. Remember the sentence said by Chancellor Bismarck a long time ago. Diplomacy without weapons is like music without instruments.
Yeah.
You need weapons,
Okay.
unfortunately. That's life.
And in these new types of wars, actually, what we saw with Ukraine now, the drones, etc., it seems that tech is playing a big role. We have the trenches in Ukraine, but you also have AI, you have drones, you have the cloud. Isn't Europe lagging behind in all these different areas?
I'm sure that Europe has to be aware about the new world. New world is space, is AI. Tomorrow it will be quantum. We need to invest more and more. We need to spend more in innovation. When you look at USA, they spent a year more than $120 billion, and at the same time, EU spent 4 billion euros. So there's a huge, huge difference. I'm sure that for European countries, it will be very interesting to spend more money for space and for digital. We need to build sovereign or autonomous cloud, because when you think that 80% of the data of European private companies are stocked in the US clouds, it's crazy. European companies paid 224 billion euros a year to be stocked in the US clouds. And you know, to build a European cloud, it's only between 100 and 150 billion euros. It's possible to do if we want. Life is question of will. Life is question of resilience. You need stronger space, digital, of course, drones, and on the field. Who are the safekeepers? Soldiers on the ground.
While we've covered many aspects of war and geopolitical risks, another auditor has a related question on emerging global threats.
Greetings from rainy Kaunas, Lithuania. As the world is already dealing with so much crisis, like conflicts, cyber attacks, and climate change, I want to ask from your experience, what are other major risks that we potentially will face in the future?
In my mind, the threats, of course, are the geopolitical situation, because the former empires like Ottoman Empire for Turkey, Persian Empire for Iran, Middle Empire for China, Russian Empire for Russia. And I'm sure that Muslim Brotherhood is another big threat, and of course, economic threat coming from USA. That's a lot. I'm not sure that we are fully aware about the situation, really. Each of these threats wants to divide European countries. They don't want a strong Europe. They don't want unified Europe. They don't want Europe. That's the main point for Trump. That's the main point for Putin, even Erdogan, Muslim Brotherhood, the same goal. We have to be aware about the situation, about the threats against us. Otherwise, we
But
will
what about
disappear.
you and your colleagues in the parliament? Are you all aware of it?
Not all of them. Some of them, yes. Look at what Friedrich Merz, the new German chancellor, said. Europe, wake up or disappear. And Donald Tusk, the Polish prime minister, said, why 450 million European people will be defended by 350 million US people? That's interesting, these sentences, because it's a Polish prime minister and a German chancellor. I'm sure people become aware step by step. We need to go faster, but that's a kind of wake up. Otherwise, we will disappear.
Christophe, I love talking to you. It's very interesting, but I'm getting depressed. Can't you give us some kind of signal of hope that makes us happy after this interview? Something nice. Is there anything good news?
I remain fully optimistic because there is so many intelligence in Europe among European people, so many capabilities, so many willings that it's possible to change the things and to wake up, to stand up. I am optimistic because the difference between an optimistic and a pessimistic guy is from an opportunity, a pessimistic guy will see a problem, will see a concern, and an optimistic guy from a concern will see an opportunity. I'm sure this is possible. And look at in the past what it happened in European countries. You can see that every time we had bad times, at the end we have good times. But we need to be aware about the situation to be sure that it's possible to go better tomorrow.
Christophe, in the era of fake news and disinformation, where are Europe's tech champions to compete with global giants?
Disinformation is a way of war for Russia. They were the best at the beginning since a long time. During communism, of course, then after communism, they are still the best disinformers. That's why I don't understand why, for example, in Europe, we don't have European social network. We don't have a European cloud. And all people use a social network, but coming from USA, coming from China, it's impossible. Why European countries are not able to build, to set up a European social network? Why we are not able to build European sovereign or autonomous cloud? We need to think about that. Otherwise, we will be the losers and the targets. And today we are the targets, of course, because we are not able to have the good story to explain who we are, because we forgot who we are. We are not in the shadow. As European countries, our story is good or bad. Never mind. But it's our story. We need to build better tomorrow. We have to think by ourselves, not through others.
We have to think by ourselves and we have to shine and prepare better tomorrow. You did manage to bring a bit of optimism in that interview, Christophe. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. All the best with your very interesting challenge. Take care. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like it and subscribe to our channel. Do you struggle to capture and share the knowledge of your experts? Contact us. We'll love to hear from you.